Kamala Harris can ride to victory by winning the 3 swing states in the Rust Belt. But what are her chances in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin that went for Biden in 2020 and for Obama in 2012? Will the changes introduced since 2020 safeguard election integrity? Why the winning candidate must win by a large margin to prevent potential political unrest? Is this why Trump bothered campaigning in New York and California?
Not all states are invented equal in the US presidential election. There are 50 states in the US, but only 7 of them get most of the attention. And among these 7 swing states, only 3 have voted for the winning candidate in all of the last 4 presidential elections. And these 3 states are Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And among them, Wisconsin has a further distinction. Its Door County is the only county among the 513 counties of the 7 battleground states that voted for the winning candidate in all of the past 6 presidential elections. Talk about batting streak. Some people say that whoever will win Door will win Wisconsin, and that whoever will win Wisconsin will win the US election next week. And this is why we cannot make any prediction about the US election without talking about Wisconsin. Joining me today to discuss the Wisconsin vote in next week's US election is Kathy Bernier. Until 2023, Kathy was a state senator in Wisconsin, where she chaired the Senate Committee on the Elections, Election Process Reform, and Ethics. And before that, she was a member of the Wisconsin State Assembly, where she chaired the Assembly Committee on Campaigns and Elections. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that there is nobody more qualified than Kathy to help us understand the Wisconsin vote in all its aspects. So first of all, Kathy, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So the latest polls showed that Harris and Trump are tied, virtually tied in Wisconsin. So most people, at least I know, are expecting a close race like in 2020 in Wisconsin. However, as you know, most polls had Biden leading Trump by 6 to 8 points, before the 2020 election. And Biden ended up winning by only 20,000 votes. So what's your reading of the polls? Is it possible that like 2020, they're undercounting Trump voters? And who do you think is going to win?
I think Donald Trump is going to win. I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse. So in the last election, people voted mostly on personality, I think, that they didn't like Donald Trump's communication skills or lack of them thereof. So they voted because they didn't really like him. And they saw Biden as kind of a known quantity. They knew what Biden was when he was in Washington, D.C. for 50 years. They had idea that he was going to be moderate and found out that Joe Biden wasn't any of the above.
The fact that Trump is not sort of your run-of-the-mill president, do you think that matters in this election? I mean, the fact that he is not he's a flawed human being, do you think that's going to hurt him with the sort of more traditional Wisconsinites?
That does hurt him a bit, but there are folks out here that rarely vote or never vote, that likes his authenticity, that knows that he's not just going to stand up there and rattle off his talking points one by one, that he's told to say this and he's told to say that. He does have a little more discipline this time to really stick with the teleprompter. For the most part, he tends to ramble on, which turns a lot of people off, and I get that. But for the most part, he is a little more disciplined and really sticking to his message about fixing the problems that Joe Biden has created.
So let's talk about the problem that Joe Biden has created. if you're an American citizen, a legal resident living in a place like Arizona, or even California or Texas for sure, you see a lot of these illegals, right, coming through. We think at least 10 million people cross the border. In places like Wisconsin, especially like rural Wisconsin, I imagine, these illegals are not that visible. So to what extent do you think that this is actually going to be an issue for people in Wisconsin?
It is a problem for all of us in the United States because we pay our tax dollars to protect this country. It just boggles my mind that the president, the vice president, Congress can't get together, close that border, and then work on an actual immigration policy that has some organization to it.
Very, very interesting what Trump has been talking about the last few weeks, which is that he thinks it's crazy that, all these foreign students come to the US to get educated. And then when they graduate, we send them home. He wants to staple a green card, he says, to every graduation, whatever degree, college degree, completed by foreign students in the US. Because Silicon Valley has been complaining for years that there is a shortage of skilled labor in the US. So from that point of view, to me, it doesn't make any sense why you want to basically bring unskilled labor, illegal, we're not going to pay any taxes, we're going to basically take jobs away from the most, the most underprivileged people in the country, the low-income household people, whereas, we don't allow skilled people to come in order to basically fill the hole that there is, especially in engineering, mathematics, in computer science, and so on and so forth. So I think the fact that Silicon Valley is backing Trump this time, as you know, which is quite unusual because the last two cycles they backed the Democrats. I think there's no doubt that this is an issue. They're going to hold Trump's feet to fire. I think they would like to see an increase in terms of quota for skilled labor that should augment the missing skill sets in the US.
Those who have been educated in the United States should have a more streamlined process for staying in the United States. Absolutely.
Women in Wisconsin already enjoy abortion rights up to 22 weeks, which makes it one of the more liberal states when it comes to abortion. Do you think this means that abortion is not going to be such an important issue for women in Wisconsin or not?
Whatever the ads say kind of makes is important to certain people if you're a woman. As a matter of fact, I had a hairdresser tell me that she was voting for Hillary Clinton because she's a woman. And I said to her, I appreciate that. However, you really should vote according to what their policies are, what their character is, and that sort of thing. And I think for the most part, women are kind of undersold that the only thing we care about is this one issue, where most women have all sorts of ideas and issues, same as men. So the fact of the matter is, when Donald Trump does not articulate this well, our Constitution gave the federal government certain authority. And within that authority, which my political science professor agreed with me, that Roe versus Wade should never have been acted on by the Supreme Court because they had no constitutional authority to do so. And therefore, that is why our current constitutional Supreme Court returned it back to the states, because anything that is not specifically noted for the federal government to act on is a moral issue that is left to the individual or to the states. And that is why he's in favor of it. Now, it is the states who have to work with their citizens on what kind of parameters around abortion. Most of us know that we have individual rights and that sort of thing. If you're a woman, I suggest that there are a lot of important issues, not necessarily abortion. And when they say that the Congress is going to act on a nationwide abortion ban or a nationwide abortion law that allows for it, the fact of the matter is, I think the Supreme Court just said it is not a federal issue.
We all know Zuckerberg's money went to finance democracy in the park, okay, activities, which was also, in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Madison, so on and so forth. Now, recently, Wisconsin voters approved a ban on private money support for elections. To what extent do you think that there's no democracy in the park in this election will actually help the Republicans on November 5th?
There were millions and millions of dollars that went to 5 counties. The 5 counties had very large cities. Large cities vote anywhere from 60 to 75%, Madison for one of them, 75% Democrat. Most of the money went to them. And one of the criteria for getting that huge grant is, number one, they had a Democrat mayor. Number two, they were to get out the vote and was part of the criteria. And then the Democrats think we're so stupid that they said, well, that was to provide PPE for the safety and security of running elections. Well, that would be, enough PPE for the next 100 years with a pandemic. They could have purchased an electronic voting equipment for every single municipality in this state and would have had money left over with just the money they gave to those 5 municipalities. So the question is, what's up, right? This is why the constitutional amendment was proposed, because it made no sense. If you wanted to help every single municipality with PPE, then give every single municipality money for PPE.
I mean, since 2020, there have been a whole bunch of safeguards that have been introduced in Wisconsin to ensure the integrity of the election process. Can you just basically talk us through some of them?
There are checks and balances along the way. I explained to people that even if you dropped a fake ballot, one that you copied at home, into an envelope, into a drop box, it would be noticed right away that this is not an official envelope. It doesn't have the barcode on it that matches your request for absentee and your poll list, that you're on the poll list. You don't have a voter registration on file. There are all those checks and balances. So you cannot cheat easily. You would have to be in cahoots with an election official. And let me tell you, I know almost every single county clerk and municipal clerk in this state. I've spoken to most of them about the electoral process. And they have a high standard of integrity when it comes to they're really do it in a nonpartisan manner. I have a lot of confidence in that. And you would have to get Democrats and Republicans who work the polls, because even if you don't have an even number, you have eyes and ears of Democrats and Republicans in that polling place and independents.
You guys basically pass a law that essentially disqualify, sort of incompetent. Right? That went through, right? Didn't it? I mean,
when somebody is deemed incompetent, there is supposed to be a process where the clerk of courts gets that information and sends it to the Wisconsin Election Commission to remove them from the polls. That process was broken. It was inconsistent throughout the state. I think a lot of clerk of courts didn't realize how important it was to do that, or didn't even know that they were supposed to do that. And so now there's a more clear-cut process for that.
When people are thinking about sitting election, people worry about non-citizens voting. They worry about non-residents voting, and they worry about dead people voting. The Supreme Court yesterday sided with Virginia, Republican Party, to demand the removal of non-citizens from the voter roll. I mean, the fact that they're even on the voter roll, that to me just seems totally crazy. So I just want to know, in Wisconsin, what is the actual process you want to put in a mail-in ballot? What proof do they need from you to ensure that you are indeed citizen, resident, and not dead?
Okay, Wisconsin has a process where our registration system is connected to the Department of Motor Vehicles. It's the Department of Corrections to determine who's a current felon, because current felons cannot vote. It also is connected to state vital records to determine what deaths have been registered with vital records, and then they can be removed from the voter rolls. We also use the ERIC system. So any member states, we have after an election check of individuals who potentially voted in more than one state. The problem is we don't have a nationwide database like that, and I think that's something Congress should look at. So Wisconsin does not have, and it's an oversight by yours truly when she was on the election committee, didn't realize that we have 200 and some thousand non-citizens who have driver's license and IDs. Illegal immigrants are not allowed to obtain a driver's license or an ID in the state of Wisconsin, but we have students, professors, people who are legally here on a green card, who have jobs and that sort of thing, and need to have a driver's license to drive. Some of those driver's licenses have notification that they're here. It's a temporary license, whatever, but most of them do not. So their driver's license looks just like mine. We can require, and the legislature is working on it, to have the Department of Motor Vehicles provide, that box. Virginia has this little box that you check that you don't have a birth certificate, you are a green card resident or whatever. That information from the Department of Motor Vehicles does not interface with the statewide voter registration system. So the only check that Wisconsin has right now is that non-citizen goes in and registers to vote. They check that they are a U.S. citizen, 18 years of age, and a legal voter, and then they sign it. So we don't know until after the election if a check is made, if a poll worker happens to know they're a non-citizen, if the county clerk or the municipal clerk recognizes somebody's a non-citizen, they can file a complaint with the district attorney. The sheriff can do the investigation and that sort of thing. There are a few that have been prosecuted. I think illegal immigrants, it would be really stupid for you to vote because we would know where you are and off you go. People who are here legally but non-citizen, Megan Wolf told me an individual called her, complained that the poll workers let her vote, and was very upset that she was being deported. So you will be deported, potentially be deported, if you vote illegally. So the penalty is supposed to deter in the state of Wisconsin. But, it's interesting. Democrats want illegal immigrants on the voter rolls, or non-citizens on the voter rolls. That just boggles my mind. It's like, we check already if you are a felon. We check already that you are deceased so that you cannot vote. Those aren't huge numbers of people, and it likely wouldn't affect an election, but we still check on that. We still should check on non-citizens being on the voter rolls along with the felons and the deceased. It's a no-brainer. If we have the ability to do that, we should do that.
Are you saying that there will be information sharing between the Bureau of Motor Vehicle and WEC to just basically make sure that there are no non-citizens who are going to be casting votes in Wisconsin?
Not before this election.
Not before this election. But you think in this election you're going to be checking? I mean, or no?
If that information is being sent to the ERIC system, then if I was on the Wisconsin Election Commission, I would vote to have that report given to me, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, by the way, that was a bone of contention in 2020, actually, for lots of states. I mean, especially given that, in some states, actually, they give out driver's license very easily, including to illegals. What about residents? I mean, I think, how confident you are in ERIC's system to basically make sure that The same person cannot vote in multiple states.
According to Pew Charitable Trust, who originally did the study about the accuracy of the voter rolls in each and every state, that is why they worked to create this database, because we had millions, like 2 million people who were registered not in 2 states, some in 3 and 4 and 5 states. So was that deliberate, or did they really move around that much and the voter rolls weren't cleaned up? Whatever the case, that is an issue. And so that is what the ERIC system actually was designed to do, to help clean up the voter rolls and to make sure they're accurate. And they didn't necessarily design it to penalize people after the fact. And that was the bone of contention, by the way, between the red states and the blue states that were members of ERIC. The red states wanted to prosecute people for voting in more than one state. You're not going to catch everyone breaking the law, right? There's not a cop in every corner to catch somebody breaking the law. You have to create the law to have a large enough penalty to deter illegal behavior.
The way that they're talking about Trump, that this guy's a fascist, he's a dictator, that he's worse than Hitler, that he's no better than Hitler, that if he gets reelected, like it's going to be all over for America. If they feel that strongly about a second Trump presidency, I mean, you would think that they're going to do everything possible to stop him. The only question is how far they're willing to go.
The way we can tell what lengths they'll go to get rid of Donald Trump is just to go back in history. So yes, Jon Stewart always likes to say, you know, Donald Trump didn't concede the election and, you know, he caused all this problem, and he did. But what I explained to people, I said, did you really want to go off without leaving your 2 cents? Because yes, Hillary Clinton conceded, but she knew that the Democrats in Congress were going to do everything they can to get rid of Donald Trump. Whether they had to make up Russian collusion to do so, whether they had the people in the Department of Justice to collude to find a way to get rid of Donald Trump, to their impeachments that were, you know, a sham, that he did nothing that other presidents hadn't done in the past. So their catch-all is hoping that they get a majority in Congress to unseat Donald Trump, which is, I'm sure the Republicans are thinking, you know, we got to do everything we can to make sure we have a Republican Congress, so we don't have that S show in the future. So Donald Trump is stubborn. I can relate a little bit. He wanted people to come to Washington, D.C. to show the support and how he thought he was cheated, but also the angst and the anger about how he was treated as the commander-in-chief of the United States. And, you know, he did a good job policy-wise. I like his policies. Sometimes I would like him to just shut up, but I like the policies because it did good things for African Americans, for Asian Americans, for Hispanics and whites. I mean, his policies were for all of us, to lift us all up so we can do better in our own lives, to raise our families and to live a good life. So that is what he really wanted. And he did all of that, trying to be ousted in an illegitimate manner. And so when we looked at 2024, are the Democrats going to pull out all the stops again? Probably.
You've been in politics for so long. America is so extremely polarized right now. I mean, is there a scenario that worries you? I mean, I can tell you, like, just looking at Twitter, X, I mean, the amount of people were talking about civil war is like absolutely unbelievable. So from that point of view, like this election, you know, I mean, it has to be not only like somebody will have to win by a lot, actually, okay, for the country to sort of say, okay, fine, that's it. I mean, if it's a close race, I really worry, what could happen.
I do as well. Matter of fact, there was a Washington Post reporter that called me not long ago asking me about the violence that could occur if Trump loses. And I said, I'm probably at this point a little more concerned about the violence that could occur if he wins. And she said, really? I said, really? The Democrats' hyperbole about fascism, about dictatorship is so beyond the pale that I believe that a lot of staunch Democrats, Hollywood and alike, and then they're going to leave the country and, yada, yada, that they are sowing fear, so much fear, if Donald Trump becomes president, that the Democrats, the political BLM, Antifa, that kind of thing occurred, I think, as an excuse in some ways. They use George Floyd as an excuse. But I don't even want to say it out loud. That BLM Antifa thing will rear its ugly head again, for partisan political reasons, rather than an excuse that a young Black man was murdered unjustly, and so that does concern me. So I think we need to all be on our guard to be respectful. Donald Trump doesn't articulate things real clearly. Thank God that he picked a good vice president, and I think he is going to be a steady hand behind President Trump, that Kamala Harris was not for Joe Biden. When he put her in charge of the border, she should have taken that directive as a full-fledged, I'm in charge and I'm going to help fix this problem. I'm going to bring my recommendations. I'm going to have a press conference. I'm going to show just how smart I am. And she avoided everything. And you will not find that in JD Vance. I am very confident that he will, when the president says, I'm going to put you in charge of this, your second in command has to show that they can handle the job if they need to. She has never been able to do that. She had a lower approval rating than what Joe Biden had, and they were both historically low. So that is why JD Vance and Donald Trump are going to states that are not blue wall states. They're going to, California, and they're going to Nevada, and I think Nevada might go red. They are going to New York. He wants the popular vote, and that will send a clear message to the Democrats. Don't try it. Do not try unseating me for 4 years.
I think you're right. I think, I think the best news that can come out of this election next week is he actually wins by, not just he wins, but wins by a landslide or popular votes, whatever, because I think that will settle the uncertainty of political risk following the election. That will basically shut everybody up, and then we'll move on and do what is good for the country in the next 4 years. So on that note, I'm totally on the same page with you, and I've got my fingers crossed. And because this is the time that we need to turn the corner, well, otherwise it's too late for the country. On that note, Kathy, thank you so much for your time. It's been extremely interesting and enlightening. And then keep our fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you so much. And pray tonight for our country that once the election's over, we will unify.
Exactly. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.